The Ant and the Grasshopper. One summer's day, a grasshopper was hopping about, chirping and singing to its heart's content. An ant passed by, bearing along with great toil an ear of corn he was taking to the nest. "Why not come and chat with me," said the grasshopper, "instead of toiling and working in that way?" "I am helping to lay up food for the winter," said the ant, "and recommend you to do the same." "Why bother about winter?" asked the grasshopper. "We've got plenty of food at present." But the ant went on its way and continued its toil. When the winter came, the grasshopper had no food and found itself dying of hunger while it saw the ants distributing corn and grain from the stores they had collected in the summer. Then the grasshopper knew, it is best to prepare for the days of necessity. The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. Now you must know that a town mouse once upon a time went on a visit to his cousin in the country. He was rough and ready, this cousin, but he loved his town friend and made him heartily welcome. Beans and bacon, cheese and bread were all he had to offer, but he offered them freely. The town mouse rather turned up his long nose at this country fare, and said, "I cannot understand, cousin, how you can put up with such poor food as this, but of course you cannot expect anything better in the country. Come home with me and I'll show you how to live. When you have been in town a week you will wonder how you could ever have stood a country life." No sooner said than done. The two mice set off for the town and arrived at the town mouse's residence late at night. "You will want some refreshment after our long journey," said the polite town mouse, and took his friend into the grand dining room. There they found the remains of a fine feast, and soon the two mice were eating up jellies and cakes and all that was nice. Suddenly they heard growling and barking. "What is that?" asked the country mouse. "It is only the dogs of the house," answered the other. "Only," said the country mouse. "I do not like that music at my dinner." Just at that moment the door flew open, and in came two huge dogs, and the two mice had to scamper down and run off. "Goodbye, cousin," said the country mouse. "What? Going so soon?" asked the other. "Yes," he replied. "Better beans and bacon in peace than cakes and ale in fear." The Shepherd's Boy. The Shepherd's Boy. There was once a young shepherd boy who tended his sheep at the foot of a mountain near a dark forest. It was rather lonely for him all day, so he thought upon a plan by which he could get a little company and some excitement. He rushed down towards the village calling out, "Wolf, wolf," and the villagers came out to meet him, and some of them stopped with him for a considerable time. This pleased the boy so much that a few days afterwards he tried the same trick, and again the 6-11 eagles came to his help. But shortly after this a wolf actually did come out from the forest, and began to worry the sheep, and the boy of course cried out, "Wolf, wolf," still louder than before. But this time the villagers, who had been fooled twice before, thought the boy was again deceiving them, and nobody stirred to come to his help. So the wolf made a good meal off the boy's flock, and when the boy complained, the wise man of the village said, "A liar will not be believed, even when he speaks the truth. A liar will not be believed, even when he speaks the truth." The Hare and the Tortoise. The Hare and the Tortoise. The hare was once boasting of his speed before the other animals. "I have never yet been beaten," said he, "when I put forth my full speed. I challenge anyone here to race with me." The tortoise said quietly, "I accept your challenge." "That is a good joke," said the hare. "I could dance round you all the way." "Silence your boasting till you've beaten me," answered the tortoise. "Shall we race?" So a course was fixed and a start was made. The hare darted almost out of sight at once, but soon stopped and, to show his contempt for the tortoise, lay down to have a nap. The tortoise plodded on, and when the hare awoke from his nap, he saw the tortoise just near the winning post and could not run up in time to save the race. Then said the tortoise, "Plodding wins the race. Plodding wins the race." The goose with the golden eggs. The goose with the golden eggs. One day a countryman going to the nest of his goose found there an egg all yellow and glittering. When he picked it up, it was as heavy as lead, and he was going to throw it away because he thought a trick had been played upon him. But he took it home on second thought, and soon found to his delight that it was an egg of pure gold. Every morning the same thing occurred, and he soon became rich by selling his eggs. As he grew rich, he grew greedy, and thinking to get at once all the gold the goose could give, he killed it and opened it, only to find nothing. Greed often overreaches itself. The wind and the sun. The wind and the sun. The wind and the sun were disputing which was the stronger. Suddenly they saw a traveler coming down the road, and the sun said, "I see a way to decide our dispute. Whichever of us can cause that traveler to take off his cloak shall be regarded as the stronger. You begin." So the sun retired behind a cloud, and the wind began to blow as hard as it could upon the traveler. But the harder he blew, the more closely did the traveler wrap his cloak round him, till at last the wind had to give up in despair. Then the sun came out and shone in all his glory upon the traveler, who soon found it too hot to walk with his cloak on. Kindness affects more than severity. The fox and the goat. The fox and the goat. By an unlucky chance, a fox fell into a deep well from which he could not get out. A goat passed by shortly afterwards, and asked the fox what he was doing down there. "Oh, have you not heard?" said the fox. "There is going to be a great drought, so I jumped down here in order to be sure to have water by me. Why don't you come down too?" The goat thought well of this advice, and jumped down into the well. But the fox immediately jumped on her back, and by putting his foot on her long horns managed to jump up to the edge of the well. "Goodbye, friend," said the fox. "Remember next time, never trust the advice of a person in difficulties." The horse and the mule. The horse and the mule. A horse and a mule were traveling together, the horse prancing along in its fine trappings, the mule carrying with difficulty the heavy weight in its panniers. "I wish I were you," sighed the mule. "Nothing to do and well fed, and all that fine harness upon you." Next day, however, there was a great battle, and the horse was wounded to death in the final charge of the day. His friend, the mule, happened to pass by shortly afterwards and found him on the point of death. "I was wrong," said the mule. "Better humble security than gilded danger." The eagle and the arrow. The eagle and the arrow. An eagle was soaring through the air when suddenly it heard the whiz of an arrow, and felt itself wounded to death. Slowly it fluttered down to the earth, with its life blood pouring out of it. Looking down upon the arrow with which it had been pierced, it found that the shaft of the arrow had been feathered with one of its own plumes. "Alas," it cried, as it died. We often give our enemies the means for our own destruction. The mule's brains. The mule's brains. The lion and the fox went hunting together. The lion, on the advice of the fox, sent a message to the mule, proposing to make an alliance between their two families. The mule came to the place of meeting, overjoyed at the prospect of a royal alliance. But when he came there, the lion simply pounced on the mule, and said to the fox, "Here is our dinner for today. You watch it while I go and have a nap, and don't you dare touch my prey." The lion went away, and the fox waited. But finding that his master did not return, he ventured to take out the brains of the mule and ate them up. When the lion came back, he soon noticed the absence of the brains, and asked the fox in a terrible voice, "What have you done with the brains?" "Brains, your majesty." "It had none, or it would never have fallen into your trap. Wit has always an answer ready." The lion, the fox, and the beasts. The lion, the fox, and the beasts. The lion once announced he was deathly sick and summoned the animals to come and hear his last will and testament. So the goat came to the lion's cave and listened for a long time. Then a sheep went in, and then a calf came up to receive the last wishes of the Lord of the Beasts. But soon the lion seemed to recover, and came to the mouth of his cave, and saw the fox, who had been waiting outside for some time. "Why do you not come to pay your respects to me?" said the lion to the fox. "I beg your majesty's pardon," said the fox, "but I noticed the tracks of the animals that have already come to you, and while I see many hoof marks going in, I see none coming out. Until those that have entered your cave come out, I prefer to remain in the open air. It is easier to get into the enemy's toils than out again." The bundles of sticks. The bundles of sticks. An old man on the point of death summoned his sons around him to give them some parting advice. He ordered his servants to bring in a bundle of sticks, and said to his eldest son, "Break it." The son strained and strained, but with all his efforts was unable to break the bundle. The other sons also tried, but none of them was successful. "Untie the sticks," said the father, "and each of you take a stick." When they had done so, he called out to them, "Now, break," and each stick was easily broken. "You see my meaning," said their father. Union gives strength. The lion in love. The lion in love. A lion once fell in love with a beautiful maiden and proposed marriage to her parents. The old people did not know what to say. They did not like to give their daughter to the lion, yet they did not wish to enrage the king of beasts. At last the father said, "We feel highly honored by your majesty's proposal, but you see our daughter is a young girl, and we fear that as the object of your affection you might possibly do her some injury. Might I venture to suggest that your majesty should have your claws removed, and your teeth extracted? Then we would gladly consider your proposal again." The lion was so much in love that he had his claws trimmed and his big teeth taken out. But when he came again to the parents of the young girl, they simply laughed in his face, for he was no longer fearsome. Love can tame the wildest. The hare with many friends. The hare with many friends. A hare was very popular with the other beasts who all claimed to be her friends. But one day she heard the hounds approaching and hoped to escape them by the aid of her many friends. So she went to the horse and asked him to carry her away from the hounds on his back. But he declined, stating that he had important work to do for his master. "I'm sure," he said, "that the bull would come to your assistance." She then applied to the bull, and hoped that he would repel the hounds with his horns. The bull replied, "I am very sorry, but I have an appointment with a lady. But I feel sure that our friend the goat will do what you want." The goat, however, feared that his back might do her some harm if he took her upon it. The ram, he felt sure, was the proper friend to apply to. So she went to the ram and told him the case. The ram replied, "Another time, my dear friend. I do not like to interfere on the present occasion, as hounds have been known to eat sheep as well as hares." The hare then applied, as a last hope, to the calf, who regretted that he was unable to help her, as he did not like to take the responsibility upon himself, as so many older persons had declined the task. By this time the hounds were quite near, and the hare took to her heels and luckily escaped. She that has many friends, has no friends. The old man and death. The old man and death. An old laborer, bent double with age and toil, was gathering sticks in a forest. At last he grew so tired and hopeless that he threw down the bundle of sticks, and cried out, "I cannot bear this life any longer. Ah, I wish death would only come and take me." Just after he spoke, Death, a grisly skeleton, appeared and said to him, "What would you like of me, mortal? I heard you call me." "Please, sir," replied the woodcutter, "would you kindly help me to lift this bundle of sticks onto my shoulder? We would often be sorry if our wishes were gratified." Belling the cat. Belling the cat. Long ago, the mice had a general council to consider what measures they could take to outwit their common enemy, the cat. Some said this, and some said that, but at last a young mouse got up and said he had a proposal to make, which he thought would meet the case. "You will all agree," said he, "that our chief danger consists in the sly and treacherous manner in which the enemy approaches us. Now, if we could receive some signal of her approach, we could easily escape from her. I venture, therefore, to propose that a small bell be procured and attached by a ribbon round the neck of the cat. By this means we should always know when she was about, and could easily retire while she was in the neighborhood." This proposal met with general applause, until an old mouse got up and said, "That is all very well, but who is to bell the cat?" The mice looked at one another and nobody spoke. Then the old mouse said, "It is easy to propose impossible remedies. It is easy to propose impossible remedies. The one-eyed doe. The one-eyed doe. A doe had had the misfortune to lose one of her eyes, and could not see anyone approaching her on that side. So to avoid any danger she always used to feed on a high cliff near the sea, with her sound eye looking towards the land. By this means she could see whenever the hunters approached her on land, and often escaped. But the hunters found out that she was blind of one eye, and hiring a boat rowed under the cliff where she used to feed, and shot her from the sea. "Ah," cried she with her dying voice, "you cannot escape your fate. You cannot escape your fate." The fox without a tail. The fox without a tail. It happened that a fox caught its tail in a trap, and in struggling to release himself lost all of it but the stump. At first he was ashamed to show himself among his fellow foxes. But at last he determined to put a bolder face upon his misfortune, and summoned all the foxes to a general meeting to consider a proposal which he had to place before them. When they had assembled together, the fox proposed that they should all do away with their tails. He pointed out how inconvenient a tail was when they were pursued by their enemies, the dogs. How much it was in the way when they desired to sit down and hold a friendly conversation with one another. He failed to see any advantage in carrying about such a useless encumbrance. "That is all very well," said one of the older foxes, "but I do not think you would have asked us to dispense with our chief ornament if you had not lost yours. Do not trust interested advice." The miser and his gold. The miser and his gold. Once upon a time there was a miser who used to hide his gold at the foot of a tree in his garden. Every week he used to go and dig it up and gloat over his gains. A robber, who had noticed this, went and dug up the gold and escaped with it. When the miser next came to gloat over his treasures, he found nothing but the empty hole. He tore his hair, and raised such an outcry that all the neighbors came around him, and he told them how he used to come and visit his gold. "Did you ever take any of it out?" asked one of them. "Nay," said he, "I only came to look at it." "Then come again and look at the hole," said a neighbor, "it will do you just as much good. Wealth unused might as well not exist." The fox and the mosquitoes. The fox and the mosquitoes. After crossing a river, a fox got its tail entangled in a bush and could not move. A number of mosquitoes, seeing its plight, settled upon it and enjoyed a good meal undisturbed by its tie-eye. A hedgehog strolling by took pity upon the fox and went up to it. "You are in a bad way, neighbor," said the hedgehog. "Shall I relieve you by driving off those mosquitoes who are sucking your blood?" "Thank you, Master Hedgehog," said the fox, "but I would rather not." "Why, how is that?" asked the hedgehog. "Well, you see," was the answer, "these mosquitoes have had their fill. If you drive these away, others will come with fresh appetite and bleed me to death. Create your own moral." Hercules and the Wagoner. Hercules and the Wagoner. A wagoner was once driving a heavy load along a very muddy way. At last he came to a part of the road where the wheels sank halfway into the mire, and the more the horses pulled, the deeper sank the wheels. So the wagoner threw down his whip, and knelt down and prayed to Hercules the strong. "O Hercules, help me in this my hour of distress," quoth he. But Hercules appeared to him, and said, "Tut, man, don't sprawl there. Get up and put your shoulder to the wheel. Fate helps them that help themselves." The fox, the rooster, and the dog. The fox, the rooster, and the dog. One moonlit night a fox was prowling about a farmer's hen coop and saw a rooster roosting high up beyond his reach. "Good news, he cried. "Why, what is it?" asked the rooster. "King Lion has declared a universal truce. No beast may hurt another henceforth, but all shall dwell together in brotherly friendship." "Why, that is good news," said the rooster. "And I see someone coming with whom we can share the good tidings." And so saying, he craned his neck forward and pretended to look far away. "What is it you see?" said the fox. "My master's dog is coming towards us," the rooster said. The fox began to turn away as soon as he heard about the dog. "Will you not stop and congratulate the dog on the reign of universal peace?" "I would gladly do so," said the fox. "But I fear he may not have heard of King Lion's decree. Cunning often outwits itself." The Laborer and the Nightingale. The Laborer and the Nightingale. A laborer lay listening to a nightingale's song throughout the summer night. So pleased was he with it that the next night he set a trap for it and captured it. "Now that I have caught thee," he cried, "thou shalt always sing to me." "We nightingales never sing in a cage," said the bird. "Then I'll eat thee," said the laborer. "I have always heard that a nightingale on toast is a dainty morsel." "Nay, kill me not," said the nightingale, "but let me free. And I'll tell thee 3 things far better worth than my poor body." The laborer let him loose, and the nightingale flew up to a branch of a tree and said, "Never believe a captive's promise. That's one thing. Then again, keep what you have. And third piece of advice is, sorrow not over what is lost forever." Then the songbird flew away. Sorrow not over what is lost forever. The Man and the Satyr. The Man and the Satyr. A man had lost his way in a wood one bitter winter's night. As he was roaming about, a satyr came up to him, and finding that he had lost his way, promised to give him a lodging for the night and guide him out of the forest in the morning. As he went along to the satyr's cell, the man raised both his hands to his mouth and kept on blowing at them. "What do you do that for?" said the satyr. "My hands are numb with the cold," said the man, "and my breath warms them." After this they arrived at the satyr's home, and soon the satyr put a smoking dish of porridge before him. But when the man raised his spoon to his mouth he began blowing upon it. "And what do you do that for?" said the satyr. "The porridge is too hot, and my breath will cool it." "Out you go," said the satyr. "I will have nothing to do with a man who can blow hot and cold with the same breath. Create your own moral." The Two Fellows and the Bear. The Two Fellows and the Bear. 2 fellows were traveling together through a wood, when a bear rushed out upon them. One of the travelers happened to be in front, and he seized hold of the branch of a tree, and hid himself among the leaves. The other threw himself flat down upon the ground, with his face in the dust. The bear, coming up to him, put his muzzle close to his ear, and sniffed and sniffed. But at last with a growl he shook his head and slouched off, for bears will not touch dead meat. Then the fellow in the tree came down to his comrade, and, laughing, said, "What was it that Master Bear whispered to you?" "He told me," said the other. "Never trust a friend who deserts you at a pinch." Never trust a friend who deserts you at a pinch. The ass in the lion's skin. The ass in the lion's skin. An ass once found a lion's skin which the hunters had left out in the sun to dry. He put it on and went towards his native village. All fled at his approach, both men and animals, and he was proud that day. In his delight he lifted up his voice and brayed, but then everyone knew him, and his owner came up and gave him a sound cudgeling for the fright he had caused. And shortly afterwards a fox came up to him and said, "Ah, I knew you by your voice. Fine clothes may disguise, but silly words will disclose a fool." The Two Crabs. The Two Crabs. One fine day 2 crabs came out from their home to take a stroll on the sand. "Child," said the mother, "you are walking ungracefully. You should accustom yourself to walking straight forward without twisting from side to side." "Pray, mother," said the young one, "do but set the example yourself, and I will follow you. Example is the best precept." The Young Thief and His Mother. The Young Thief and His Mother. A young man had been caught in a daring act of theft and had been condemned to be executed for it. He expressed his desire to see his mother and to speak with her before he was led to execution, and of course this was granted. When his mother came to him he said, "I want to whisper to you," and when she brought her ear near him, he nearly bit it off. All the bystanders were horrified and asked him what he could mean by such brutal and inhuman conduct. "It is to punish her," he said. "When I was young I began with stealing little things, and brought them home to mother. Instead of rebuking and punishing me, she laughed and said, 'It will not be noticed.' It is because of her that I am here today." "He is right, woman," said the priest. "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old he will not depart therefrom. Teach a child well." The Man and the Wooden God. The Man and the Wooden God. In the old days men used to worship stones and idols, and prayed to them to give them luck. It happened that a man had often prayed to a wooden idol he had received from his father, but his luck never seemed to change. He prayed and he prayed, but still he remained as unlucky as ever. One day in the greatest rage he went to the wooden god and with one blow swept it down from its pedestal. The idol broke in two, and what did he see? An immense number of coins flying all over the place. Create your own moral. The Fisher. The Fisher. A fisher once took his bagpipes to the bank of a river and played upon them with the hope of making the fish rise, but not one fish put its nose out of the water. So he cast his net into the river and soon drew it forth filled with fish. Then he took his bagpipes again, and, as he played, the caught fish leapt up in the net. "Ah, you dance now when I play," said he. "Yes," said an old fish, "when you are in a person's power you must do as they bid. When you are in a person's power you must do as they bid." The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. A wolf found great difficulty in getting at the sheep owing to the vigilance of the shepherd and his dogs. But one day it found the skin of a sheep that had been flayed and thrown aside, so it put it on over its own pelt and strolled down among the sheep. The lamb that belonged to the sheep, whose skin the wolf was wearing, began to follow the wolf in the sheep's clothing. So, leading the lamb a little apart, he soon made a meal of her, and for some time after he succeeded in deceiving the sheep, and enjoying hearty meals. Appearances are deceptive. The dog in the manger. The dog in the manger. A dog looking out for its afternoon nap jumped into the manger of an ox and lay there cozily upon the straw. But soon the ox, returning from its afternoon work, came up to the manger and wanted to eat some of the straw. The dog, in a rage, being awakened from its slumber, stood up and barked at the ox, and whenever it came near attempted to bite it. At last the ox had to give up the hope of getting at the straw and went away muttering, "Ah, people often grudge others what they cannot enjoy themselves. People often grudge others what they cannot enjoy themselves." The Fox and the Cat. The Fox and the Cat. A fox was boasting to a cat of its clever devices for escaping its enemies. "I have a whole bag of tricks," the fox said, "which contains 100 ways of escaping my enemies." "I have only one," said the cat. "But I can generally manage with that." At that very moment they heard the cry of a pack of hounds coming towards them, and the cat immediately scampered up a tree and hid herself in the boughs. "This is my plan," said the cat. "What are you going to do?" The fox thought first of one way, then of another, and while he was debating the hounds came nearer and nearer. And at last the fox in his confusion was caught up by the hounds and soon killed by the huntsman. The cat, who had been looking on, said, "Better one safe way than 100 on which you cannot reckon. Better one safe way than 100 on which you cannot reckon." The Tree and the Reed. The Tree and the Reed. "Well, little one," said a tree to a reed that was growing at its foot, "why do you not plant your feet deeply in the ground, and raise your head boldly in the air as do I?" "I am contented with my lot," said the reed. "I may not be so grand, but I think I am safer." "Safe," sneered the tree. "Who shall pluck me up by the roots or bow my head to the ground?" But it soon had to repent of its boasting. For a hurricane arose which tore it up from its roots and cast it a useless log on the ground, while the little reed, bending to the force of the wind, soon stood upright again. When the storm had passed over, obscurity often brings safety. The Dog and the Wolf. The Dog and the Wolf. A gaunt wolf was almost dead with hunger when he happened to meet a house dog who was passing by. "Ah, cousin," said the dog, "I knew your irregular life will soon be the ruin of you. Why do you not work steadily as do I, and get your food regularly given to you?" "I would have no objection," said the wolf, "if I could only get a chance." "I will easily arrange that for you," said the dog. "Come with me to my master and you shall share my work." So the wolf and the dog went towards the town together. On the way there the wolf noticed that the hair on a certain part of the dog's neck was very much worn away, so he asked him how that had come about. "Oh, it is nothing," said the dog. "That is only the place where the collar is put on at night to keep me chained up. It chafes a bit, but one soon gets used to it." "Is that all?" said the wolf. "Then goodbye to you, Master Dog. Better starve free than be a fat slave." The Wolf and the Lamb. The Wolf and the Lamb. Once upon a time a wolf was lapping at a spring on a hillside when, looking up, what should he see but a lamb just beginning to drink a little lower down. "There's my supper," thought he, "if only I can find some excuse to seize it." Then he called out to the lamb, "How dare you muddle the water from which I am drinking?" "Nay, master, nay," said Lambikin, "if the water be muddy up there, I cannot be the cause of it, for it runs down from you to me." "Wli, then," said the wolf, "why did you call me bad names this time last year?" "That cannot be," said the lamb, "I am only 6 months old." "I don't care," snarled the wolf, "if it was not you it was your father," and with that he rushed upon the poor little lamb. Any excuse will serve a tyrant. The dog and the shadow. The dog and the shadow. It happened that a dog had got a piece of meat and was carrying it home in his mouth to eat it in peace. Now on his way home he had to cross a plank lying across a running brook. As he crossed, he looked down and saw his own shadow reflected in the water beneath. Thinking it was another dog with another piece of meat, he made up his mind to have that also. So he made a snap at the shadow in the water, but as he opened his mouth the piece of meat fell out, dropped into the water, and was never seen again. Beware lest you lose the substance by grasping at the shadow. The Wolf and the Crane. The Wolf and the Crane. A wolf had been gorging on an animal he had killed, when suddenly a small bone in the meat stuck in his throat and he could not swallow it. He soon felt terrible pain in his throat, and ran up and down groaning and seeking for something to relieve the pain. He tried to induce everyone he met to remove the bone. "I would give anything," said he, "if you would take it out." At last the crane agreed to try, and told the wolf to knee on his side and open his jaws as wide as he could. Then the crane put its long neck down the wolf's throat, and with its beak loosened the bone, till at last it got it out. "Will you kindly give me the reward you promised?" said the crane. The wolf grinned and showed his teeth and said, "Be content. You have put your head inside a wolf's mouth and taken it out again in safety. That ought to be reward enough for you. Gratitude and greed go not together." The Lion and the Mouse. The Loin and the Mouse. Once, when a lion was asleep, a little mouse began running up and down upon him. This soon wakened the lion, who placed his huge paw upon him, and opened his big jaws to swallow him. "Pardon, O king," cried the little mouse, "forgive me this time, I shall never forget it. I may be able to return the favor one of these days." The lion was so tickled at the idea of the mouse being able to help him that he lifted up his paw and let him go. Some time after, the lion was caught in a trap, and the hunters, who desired to carry him alive to the king, tied him to a tree while they went in search of a wagon to carry him on. Just then the idle mouse happened to pass by, and seeing the sad plight of the lion, went up to him and soon gnawed away the ropes that bound the king of the beasts. "Was I not right?" said the little mouse. "Little friends may prove great friends."